Hey everyone, this is Dave Cohen on Guitar Tales, Rob Balducci. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Just for the first time ever, I put this guy on right here. He is our 32nd guest on the show. All right, leave
Hey,
me
Bo, how you doing?
alone. So I am thrilled to have you. You are, I think, our second shredder guitar guest. We had the great Steve Bello on in season one, and I think we're in season four at this point now. I had a lot of fun looking around YouTube, checking out a lot of your videos. I know you're really into gear, and as a little bit of a clue, I could just look behind you right now. I could see all sorts of great gear stuff.
Yeah, it's the disease, you know?
It's a wonderful disease, in my
Yeah.
humble opinion. Yeah, you got all sorts of great stuff there. Look at that. So what I like and what I noticed, I think in one of your videos, you have a glass case with effects right next to you.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah,
hear
right
about
there.
that one.
Well, I was this is a recently new studio that I have in a where we recently moved, my wife and I. So
Right, right.
I had to make one of the rooms like some basically a studio headquarters. So
It looks great.
yeah, when we were setting it up, I have so many pedals. I still have some of the first pedals from when I was a kid. So I was like, I want somewhere to put them because in my other place, everything was unorganized. So I said, the new place, I'm starting fresh. I'm going to do it nice.
It
So,
looks great.
yeah, I found this in IKEA.
I was going to ask, in its regular life or its intended use, what do you think that's for? Is it like for curios, for like glasses?
I think either that or it's like somebody that like maybe has a collection of some glasses or figurines or something.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I like that a lot. And I had a feeling Bo was going to be a little difficult with this tonight. Hey, before I forget, let's toast each other. I
Yes,
know you have
cheers.
some wine with you. Cheers. Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us. So I see you've got that rack right there with all the effects. What are your favorite kind of effects that you work with these days?
Well, you know, as a guitar player, for some reason, I always had a thing with like overdrive pedals. So I do have tons of overdrive pedals. The newest overdrive pedal that I have that I really do like a lot is the new Vemoram.
Okay.
It's a Vemoram Tube Screamer. They did a thing with Ibanez combination, and I mean, it sounds great.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've
Yeah.
told this. Oh, go on. Go
Go
on.
ahead. Oh yeah, no, and I'm thinking about stuff that I used on my latest recording. Like I really like the Eventide H9. I use that a lot.
Right.
And Keeley has a pedal called the Keeley Electronics has a pedal called the Monterey, which I really
Okay.
dig.
Oh, that's very cool. I think I told the story once on Guitar Tales. As a teenager, I found somewhere a 1 watt amplifier, and I figured out a way to connect it to an AC current. I built an input and an output with 1/4 inch jacks, and I basically built a 1 watt amplifier that I used as an overdrive. So I sort of built it like a guitar special effect, but what I was really doing was, getting the basic input from the guitar, which isn't boosted, and then exporting a 1 watt signal, and then taking that 1 watt signal and putting it fresh into the input of a guitar amp. And no controls on it. That's all. It was just you either used it or you didn't, and it worked great.
Yeah, I mean, low wattage stuff sounds really good, and you probably got a nice like a natural like overdrive in it if you pushed it a little bit farther,
It
right?
did. It was beautiful, and I just love the whole concept. But there was a time before you and I were born, or maybe when we were first born, where there was no such thing. You know,
Yeah.
And then at some point, the Kinks, I think Ray Davies used to slice his speakers up to create some cool sound. Jimmy was playing with his Sun amps and his Marshalls and all that.
Yeah.
But at some point, somebody realized that instead of a clean signal, putting your amp or your preamp through its paces and hurting it a little bit can create some truly amazing tones.
Yeah.
And I
Sure.
love that we've built this entire industry that finds these great creative ways, um, to get us those tones. I mean, think about what Jimmy did all those years ago. He would just get an entire room. Was he Sun or was he Marshall? I think
He used Marshall, but I think he might have used Sun at some point. But Marshall was the big thing for the
right,
overdrive.
right. And then he would, whatever, however many decibels, I'm sure had he lived, his hearing would have been worse than Pete Townsend's.
Yeah,
And just to create that sonic internal noise with the feedback. And the louder the amp is, the louder your strings vibrate, and then it goes back and forth. Or even just putting your guitar in front of your amp to create feedback.
yeah.
It's very cool. And I love that you're into the science of that and all the different tones.
Yeah, well, there's that one aspect of it, but there's also what you were just bringing up about small watt amps. Like, I think I was reading something about, everyone's got to be a Jimmy Page fan. I was a big Jimmy Page fan as a
Yeah.
kid. So, like when you listen to the first record and Communication Breakdown, you think that's like, it's a big amp, but it was a little Fender, amp,
Oh, really? I
112,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
like a Champ or something like that.
Well, I heard that I read as a teenager again, someone had told me, or I read somewhere, that Champ amps or the little Princeton amp
Yeah,
were in more recordings than almost any other amp, like in the studio.
yeah,
Because there were
eh,
these beautiful little, whatever, 20-watt tube amps, I'm assuming with a 12 or a 10,
right.
that just created phenomenal sound, absolutely phenomenal sound. But yeah, I love you put them through their paces. I haven't heard anything since the Kinks about actually, other than a Leslie where you move the speaker.
Yeah,
The idea of literally slicing up a speaker is pretty creative. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really good stuff. I apologize for the pooch right now. He's
Oh, it's all right.
very jealous. Um, and then, now, what do you have on the rack next to your pedals,
The rack next to
or not to the right there? Yeah, what do you have
yeah.
on there?
So those are heads that I've had, that I've accumulated over the years. So there's a Cornford amp on the bottom.
Right.
Then there next up is a Soldano, the Hot Rod 50 plus. Then you go up again, and it's it's like an Mesa Boogie amp switcher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a Egnator there that I borrowed from a buddy of mine. Then on the top is a Mesa Boogie mini rectifier, and next to it, if you could see that white at the
Yeah, I can.
top, that's a Brian May like mini head that he came out with through Vox, and they don't make it anymore. It's
I would
it's
love to hear about that. And I also want to talk a little about Boogie because I've mistold on this show a number of times the origin story of Mesa Boogie. I know it's something like he played a trick on a friend by putting basically a Marshall into a Champ amp or something like that. Do you know the real story of how
I,
Boogie started?
I don't know the real story. I just know that I just know like from talking to people that do amps
Right.
and stuff. I'm not too much on the technical end of that, but I
Right.
do know that supposedly it's it's based off a Fender amp, I think,
Right. That's what I had
and
heard.
then he just kind of modded it.
Yeah, and the idea, I guess, is that you have a gigantic amp inside of a little amp. Like all the it would be like putting like a Corvette 450 engine into a Pinto or something like that. That's my understanding of it. Now, tell me about the Brian May amp, because I was actually going to bring him up a moment ago. You think about Brian May, who is just a wonderful guitar player, but a technological genius. And who's the guy who created the Rockman amp from Boston? Who's that
Oh,
again?
Tom Schultz.
Yeah, right. Schultz. Right, right. And you got like Schultz went to MIT,
Yeah.
like, yeah, just brilliant people. So what is the Brian May amp? Because no one has duplicated his sound as far as.
No, this was something that Fox came out with a couple of years. It was a while ago. I had maybe 2004, something
Right.
like that. They came out with this little lamp. And basically, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to replicate his treble booster, so you could use it actually somewhat to what you were saying before. So you could use it. It's a very small watt. It's a low watt. Maybe it's 5 watts. I don't know.
Right.
And you could actually run it into an amp as a gain stage. So and like to boost an already
Uh,
overdriven amp, or you could use it by itself, and it sounds like great. Like if you plug that into a 412 bottom, it sounds like amazing.
Wow,
And
that's pretty.
it's only volume and tone, nothing else on it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
There's something at Brian May, like, every so often we get these guitar players. I mean, obviously Eddie's in that class too, where they, not forgetting their virtuosity on guitar, where they come up with these tones that are just so amazing and so interesting. And
Yeah.
Brian May, did with Queen, it's just outstanding.
Yeah.
Uh, so let me switch gears a little bit. Let me talk about you. I understand you might be a guitar player.
Yes.
So when did you start? Are you someone who started in like grade school, a little later?
Yeah, I started, you know, basically I was introduced to the guitar by my I have three older sisters. So my oldest sister used to play like on a Sokovia acoustic guitar that she
Oh,
had,
really?
and I
Like, I will teach you how to play guitar guy, right?
yeah, well, she it wasn't really pushed or anything. I saw her playing, and she used to sing at like family things, and I think she might have did something like a church thing or something.
Okay.
And I started to, interest in it maybe around 8, 9 years old, and then like maybe 10 or 11 years old is when I really started to have an interest in it. So that's
Well,
really
that's
kind
great.
of when I started.
So that's nice and young. I mean, we've had some people on who started as teenagers or even young adults.
Yeah,
But that's fantastic. And
yeah.
when did this? I'm going to ask you to put humility aside for a moment, because I know you're a shredder and I know I've watched. When did you sort of get the sense, hey, I might be pretty damn good at this? At what age were you feeling that?
Um, well, to be honest with you, I come from like school of that you can't really have an attitude that in that way that you think that you're good or something. There's two ways. I learned this
I
from a
appreciate that.
teacher. I learned this from a teacher. You
Yeah.
have to have confidence and you have to believe in yourself, because when you're playing in front of an audience, you have to, if you go up there and you have no confidence, you're not going to be able to do it. So
Right, right, right.
that's one separate thing, and that's like, a wholly totally separate bag. And then there's the other thing about, having an ego or something about how you play. And I think that's any musician, not only a guitar player. I think that's the worst thing to do, because if you think
Yeah.
that you're that good, then you never learn. And to me, I'm learning something new every day. I teach a lot. I mean, one of the things about teaching is I actually learn from a student, you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
everyone looks at the guitar a different way, which I think is an amazing thing. So
Yeah.
if I showed you a blues pattern and I had a blues pattern, we had a kid here, a blues pattern, you're going to play, even though it's the same notes, you're going to play something different. He will, I will, and that's the magic.
That's fantastic. And while you were giving me that response, which I truly, truly organically appreciate, I will retool my question. All right. When was it that you thought, hey, I might want to do this professionally?
I mean, I think early on, one thing that I did bring up early when we saw about the age,
Right.
there's when I was around, I think 10 or 11, I actually came down with type 1 juvenile diabetes.
Oh, wow.
So that was sort of like I came down with that, and that's sort of when I started to get into the guitar, and that kind of was the guitar was sort of my escape, So it was really like all I kind of did for the first couple of years, when I was doing it, from instead of going out, I would be sitting home 14, 15, come home from school, and that's all I would do, for years. So at that point, when I saw that, there's something about uh, learning an instrument, any instrument really, there's a focus that you have to put into it, and I
Right.
think that's why I think that music is so important, even with regular school stuff, because
Absolutely.
playing an instrument, there's a certain focus that you need, and if you apply that focus to your grades and your schooling, it definitely, you can adapt that to your scholastic stuff. So it actually really helped me, and I started to know that this is what I wanted to do, just because that was my escape and it made me feel good. So you want to do something that makes you feel good.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I kind of knew early on.
So one of the things I like about that story is that you took what was and certainly could have been an adversity in your life, which is the diagnosis of the diabetes. But then on some strange level, the diabetes took care of you
Yeah.
and sort of forced you, to be, potentially more sedentary or maybe just sort of focused on your health more than running around and being more, say, physically or outwardly active. But then it gave you this amazing gift. It literally gave you the gift of music. You know,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely did.
that's super cool. And then now in high school, did you take the route where you were in bands and doing the cover tunes and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I was in a band early, so I was in a band at like 14 years old,
Okay.
and everybody else was older than me, like 18, in their 18 and 19 years old, and we started playing around, and I really, they wouldn't allow me in the venues, so I had to
Right.
bring a chaperone. So my father used to come with me all the time. He
Oh,
would
that's
drive me, he would be
fantastic.
the chaperone. So that continued for years because you know, I was playing for a while. Um,
Well, are you a Jersey guy? Are you from New York?
Queens,
Yeah,
Queens, New
I
York.
heard a little New York in here. My family's from Brooklyn.
Okay,
Um, but yeah, so I'm thinking you look younger than I do. So by the time you're of age, everywhere it's 21, right?
right.
I was chasing it when I was 18. Let me think. When I was 18, they lowered it to 19. And right before I turned 19, they raised the drinking age to 20. Then right before I was 20, they raised the drinking age to 21. So I kept chasing it, but I had a fake ID, so that helped. But
Yeah,
um, but yeah, so if you're in a band at 14, so that's 7 years
yeah,
that you can't legally, at least on your own, be in any of those venues if they had alcohol.
yeah. My father would take me everywhere.
That's excellent.
He was very supportive. Both my parents.
Now, even though you were raised to be and continue to be humble, you just shared something with me. If you're 14 and you're in bands with people who are 18 and up, that tells me you're good. You know,
Well, but really, the whole deal about that is it's always good to play with players that are better than you
oh, absolutely.
because you get that's how you progress.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if it means anything, but every band I've ever been in, I've been the worst musician. I don't know if I did it by design, but that's how it, or if it has anything to do with the fact that I'm not good, but it sort of played out like that. With one exception, though, when I was the same age, when I was 14, I was with some older guys in a band called Bloody Smegma. Yes, I
I
was in
like
a
that.
guitar band, and we were a punk band in 19, I think 79 or maybe 78, 79. And they were older and they were worse than I was. They didn't even tune their instruments. Although years later, they actually put out a couple of EPs.
Wow.
They did okay for themselves. They actually got pretty good. Um, so you're in high school, you're playing gigs, and you're not just playing at high school events, you're playing in real venues like.
Yeah, we're playing bars. We're playing, there was a bunch of clubs in New York and Long Island, Queens.
Right. Now, what's interesting, I'm wondering, so you've got these older guys and maybe gals in the band, but you're a 14-year-old kid with dad. So at that age, you're not I'm guessing, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, you're not really at that juncture partaking in the rock and roll lifestyle, right?
No, no, definitely not. It's like,
Yeah.
we go down to the gig and, I would do my thing, and
Yeah.
my father was cool though. He would hang out
Right.
with us in the band and stuff. But, I once I started to, but I can't lie, like once I got to like 16, 17, of course they would sneak me the beers or something and I would
Right.
partake.
Yeah,
But
that's
not at 14.
yeah, not at 14, but I would think by 17, 18, 19,
Yeah,
whether you had your fake ID or you just sort of got in or what have you.
yeah.
That because you're not just in a band on a stage in a bar. You're in a band on stage in a bar playing either rhythm or maybe even at that point lead guitar. So that makes you probably the second most visible person next to the singer, right?
Yeah.
You know, as a rhythm guitar player in college, no one was interested in me. But as a lead guitar player, and you're playing in real venues, you're getting attention at that point, right?
Well, yeah, it would be a lot of times it would be, look at the young kid,
Oh,
playing
right, right, right.
playing the Black Sabbath solo to Neon Nights or something.
Right, right,
That
right.
would be like, wow, and then it would be like, it was cool because a lot of the girls would be like, oh, he's so cute, he's a young kid.
Right, right. You suffered from what I did, which is a baby face, right? You weren't 19 looking, you were like you were 25. You were looking, yeah, that's how I was.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're doing that through high school and beyond. Um, and then when did you start to segue into original work?
Well, I started to I started to write early on and get ideas, and I would put them on I would put it on like a regular, one of those old cassette players, and I would put it on the cassette players. And then eventually I got like a Tascam four
Which is
track, which I still have down
which
here
is
in the
better than
corner.
the Fostex.
Yeah,
I had a
and
Fostex. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean I just started to get some ideas to put it down, and you know I was at that time I was starting to get into stuff from like my sister, and I heard like Jeff Beck instrumental stuff,
Mhm.
and that kind of like and to be honest with you, through my career of being in a band with cover bands, there was always it's like the lead singer disease thing. There was always a problem with the singers. So at one point, maybe maybe around 18 or 19, between 18 and 20, I kind of got fed up with the whole idea of the dealing with the with that kind of
The ego.
stuff. Yeah, so I said, you know what? I'm gonna start to think about this instrumental thing, and I think I was in college, and I met a drummer, uh, and we was in a cover band as well at that point, and then I started to do originals, and we put like a trio together. And it's interesting that it was me, it was the drummer Keith Caramello, and the bass player was a guy named Dan Miranda, who he actually ended up playing in Queen, for when they did those shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's on my first album. He's a really
That's
great
very
bass player.
cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I started to get the itch to do the instrumental thing, and at that point the name of the band was called Max, and then I ended up changing it like around 1990 something. The band started to I started to get some interest, and we started to got like a thing to do my first record, and I was talking with the label and the people there, and they thought that it would be better to change it to my name, so that's what we did, and then it ended up just staying that way.
Right. Well, that I think what happens sometimes is that when people have the right combination of devotion, talent, and work ethic, it just becomes natural that that person is the draw. And if you have to brand it, you can pick a random name. You can pick Foresight or some weird name like
Right.
that. But if you are the draw, you're the glue, then it makes the most sense to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think at that time I think some of the band members may not have been happy about it, but
Yeah.
throughout the years, things change. I mean, I change. I throughout my career I've changed bands a lot. Like each record actually had most of the time had a different band on it. Uh, Most recently, the band that I have currently that did the new record with me, we've been together actually for a while. It's probably around the past 8 years.
Yeah, and let me take this opportunity to mention it. The name of the album is Transcendence.
Yes.
And you are ridiculously easy to find on social media, but let me put it out there. Your name is Rob Balducci. You have robbalducci.com. You've
Yes.
got a Facebook page. You're on Spotify. I forgot to write it down, but you had a very cool tech page. It was something like something zone, maybe, where you were I know you did an unboxing on one of them.
Oh yeah. That's the YouTube. It's like Gears. It's Rob
Years
Balducci, but
or something.
it's called Gear Tone
Your
Sanctuary.
tongue. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're very easy to find. So having listened to it, I'm going to tell our Guitar Tales friends and family, check it out. You were kind enough to send us an advanced download of your album. And I also was able to take a look at some of the stuff on YouTube, including another video. Rob is a guy who works very hard on his craft and on really conscientiously coming up with musical tones and melodies that I think are really interesting, and I think you guys will appreciate. So people on the 7th, I don't know when we'll air. We might end up airing a little after the release of your album. We'll have to see, because we'll have to go into post. But how can people find your album?
Well, you could. There's two different ways for the people that still. I'm still a physical person, so if it's people that want a physical product, you can go to robbalducci.com. The CD's on there. It's actually a brand new website, so definitely check it out.
Yeah.
And I have like things on there where you could buy the new record and you get like some of the other, a couple of the other records that I've done before. You can get them almost like at half price if you do a bundle. So definitely check that out.
Okay.
And then of course,
let me cut you off. When people look up Balducci, it's R-O-B. I'm looking at my notes here. You can see my eyes are getting averted. R-O-B, another B. So ROBBALDUCCI.com, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So when you look up Rob Balducci, it's two B's in the middle of that, but go on.
Yes. So that's where you can get the physical stuff. And then, of course, you know, nowadays, you can, as of the 7th, January 7th, you'll be able to get it on the download sites. It'll be on Spotify. It'll be on iTunes. It'll be on Amazon. And, you know, there's a tons of other ones, but it'll be on all of them.
That's fantastic. So, you know what I'm thinking of right now? Talk to us a little bit about what it means in 2022 to release, and I'm doing the air quote for those. We do a podcast too, so people might not see it, but I'm doing an air quote here. An album compared to what an album meant, say, 15, 20 years ago, because they're very different animals. You know, in terms of your life as a musician, making a living off of this,
right?
The experience of someone who is a consumer of music, right?
Right.
What does it mean to you right now to release an album?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, as an artist, it hasn't changed. I mean, you work on something, you know, each one of my records is like a, you know, I see it as a time capsule of a certain period in my life.
Right.
So this captures, the new album Transcendence captured a certain period. I'm an independent artist, so let's get that clear. It's like I'm not like and that's exactly what it is. I'm an artist. I'm not doing this. If I would have gotten into this to make like to be a lot of money, I would have quit a long time ago. You know, like Frank Zappa said once, if you watch that new documentary, I always think about this, and he was like, if you're going to be an original artist, and this was back when he was starting out, you want to play original music, you better have a backup day job to go with it, because it's very hard, especially at doing instrumental guitar rock. So, so you know, it's the same for me, because it's releasing my art. It's releasing stuff that stuff that's very personal to me. It's kind of my style that I feel that my music has a very personal edge to it, which I think is good, because there's an emotion involved in the writing. You know, it's shred, but it's really not shred. Guitar World did a quote for my first record, and they called it hummable shred. So basically, it's melodic. You know what I mean? And it's written like there was a singer. So that's that end of it. As an artist, it's great. I'm always excited to release new music. Now in 2022. It's kind of a different story, because, you know, you got the whole thing where you're not really making that much money from all the streaming stuff. So I mean, I don't know. I think there might be a change in moving forward, and maybe the way the music community deals with this kind of stuff. Because right now, I mean, artists are not making money off of streaming. You know, I did recently, you know, something to talk about is I did get involved with this new website that I did. and it's done through a company called rewardmusic.com, which is
Okay.
was a company started by Dweezil Zapper and a partner. And basically what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to put the money back in the artist's hands. So when people go to my website and they buy the stuff, it's going to me. And if you sign up, you get like breaks on stuff that you buy. And eventually what I'm going to have is I'm going to have the download stuff to be able to download directly from my website. So the money goes directly to me and you don't have to share it with Spotify and all these people.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, I mean, I think that's probably the way it's going to go. The only thing is it's a catch-22 because right now anyone can really release a record the way things are, and you can get it on all these streaming sites. But if you're a huge band like, I don't know, I'm just saying Metallica or something like that, they can release the record, not go through any of these streaming services, put it on their site. They got millions of fans. They go and buy the record. They make money.
Yeah.
So it seems like the new artists always get screwed somehow, whether it was back in the heyday when you signed this horrible record deal and you didn't get paid, or now you have this new thing where streaming and you can't make any money.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So it's wrapped in a different paper.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So I can't avoid. So I want to keep on this topic, but you just made me think of something pretty funny. You've mentioned Frank and Dweezil. What popped in my head when you mentioned Frank, I spent about 8 or 9 hours with Amit in LA in a limo and the Playboy Mansion.
Oh, that must have been funny. He's a character, right?
Yeah, he was the character. Yeah, with a bunch of other people at an album release party there was an MTV VJ who was about 1,000 feet tall. He was some guy he was like 6'6", and I went to the Playboy Mansion for an album release party with Amit Zappa and a handful of other people. But anyway, so it just popped in my head. So
that's funny.
Yeah,
that must be a nice story.
It's a fun story. But back to what you're saying, a lot of thoughts about what you're talking about with streaming. My first thought as you're talking about it, if we go back thousands of years, right? Artists, whether they're painters or musicians or poets or what have you, like you, they're creating their art simply to satisfy that internal artistic need to create, right?
Yeah.
And part of me wonders if the robbing artists like you of the ability to make money out of the simple act and the complicated act of creating and disseminating art maybe makes it more pure.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's true. I mean, there's I don't know. I play guitar, but I consider myself, that's just my instrument of choice. I consider myself a songwriter. So the thing is, if you could write a song and say, hey, I want to write a song that's going to be, hot to what's going on in the world today, and I'm going to listen to the radio and come up with something. To me, that's like
it soils the integrity of it right away.
It's horrible. Yeah. So the cool thing I think about my music is, and I think a lot of instrumental. I think the cool thing about instrumental is it's a universal thing. So you don't have to have you don't have to know the words. So, and someone in Italy, somebody in Sweden could listen to it, not worry about the vocals, but if you could pick up the feeling from it. Feelings, everyone has emotions and feelings. So I think it's kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, and every so often someone taps into lightning in a bottle. Like I'm thinking like Frankenstein, right?
Yeah.
And then what was Jeff Beck's most popular? I own the album. I can't think of his really.
Yeah, off of Blow by Blow, probably.
Yeah. I can't. But every so often, and I think it's a higher task because you can't sort of take a shortcut by grabbing an easily memorizable refrain. I'm thinking Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, right?
Yeah.
Another one bites the dust, boom, and Freddie could do that, right? But you have a harder task because you have to take a look at your guitar. You know, you've got your 6, maybe 7 strings. You've got 20 to 24 frets, and you got to figure out a way to combine those to come up with something that's emotive and memorable. And you can't lean on words
Yeah.
to do that. So that's a high level task, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the cool thing, the cool thing about it is I kind of have my own process, and that it gets easier and easier. That, you know, when I kind of go with students and tell them to try and do this kind of thing, sometimes the thing that I come up with, and then I kind of hone
Oh,
in on that
cool.
and try and write something that with from the inspiration. So, like, I could give you an example on
Yeah.
on the new record. The new record has a lot to do with the last couple of years of my life. I lost both of my parents,
Oh, sorry.
so a lot of the inspiration comes from the process of dealing with all that. So
Yeah.
there's one song called "Life Is Precious," and I basically came up with the melody and the title from like being with my father when he was in the hospital. I was in there a lot with him, and you know, we would, you know, maybe they were wanted to do something else to try and help him, and I was like the person that they went to. I forgot the term, but they would, my approval they had to get.
You,
So
you were the healthcare power of attorney.
yes, yes. So they were, so
You're being
I,
interviewed by a lawyer right now, so I know these things. So yeah,
so so
I'm
they would.
sorry you had to be in that position.
Oh yeah, you know, but he wanted it that way, so it was good. So
Okay. Okay.
you know, they would come to me and they'd say, "Listen, we want to try this." So I would go to my father, "Hey, you know," and I was straight with them, you know, and I would say, "Dad, listen, they're gonna have to go into your leg and try and open up the vein. If they don't do that, you know, it's probably gonna get infected, and in the long run, you know, you're going to go into hospice and you're going to die." So I said, either we go that route or we go and we try and fix it. I said, "What do you want to do?" And it was always be like, he would say, "Robert, life is precious." He says, let's go and try it." And this happened like a bunch of times where we would try this thing, and I would say, "Dad, we could give up, or do you want to go?" And he would always come back with that phrase, so it stuck in my head. And then
Wow.
that's what the song, you know, that's why I named the song that, and that was the inspiration.
That's nothing short of beautiful.
Oh,
Good for
thank
you.
you.
Good for you. So
So
I love that. I love, and you know, I love that you pour that into your craft and your art. And you know, it's interesting. I'm looking to your right, my left, into that little case. And when you were trying to convey those feelings, those emotions, those thoughts, it makes all the more sense that you're not just picking one special effects box. Because if you're doing this without a vocalist to just simply say, I feel like this because of that, right? Because you could do that with lyrics. One can do that with lyrics.
right.
You have to do it purely with the sound that comes out of your guitar and your amp and all that. So when I'm looking there and I'm probably seeing about 10 or 15 special effects boxes, you can pick a very specific tone or experiment with a few times and say, this one matches how I'm feeling in this song in this moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it makes
yeah,
sense.
I mean, that's the cool thing about you know, nowadays where you're able to do the stuff like I recorded the guitar part. Everything wasn't recorded in here. All the guitars were. So I could, like, you know, without having to worry about breaking the bank because of studio time, I could sit here and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this song I want it to sound like this, and how am I going to get it?" And I could fiddle around, get the sound, and then do the. And that's what's cool, I think, about the new record, is that there isn't like each song has its own vibe because there was
Yeah.
different stuff used on it. Which in the old days, I remember going in, you know, when I first my first 2 3 records, because we were in a big studio and you had to pay, it would be like, I got a lead sound, let's do the leads for the for 3 tracks.
Every track, right?
Now it's like I get to mess around. So in the at the end result, I think is a nicer.
I wonder if studio, you'll know better than I, are studios hurting these days because, you know, people can do what you do in a home studio with an Apple or whatever, or
Yeah,
what?
I think like in Manhattan, there was Avatar Studios, which is a Power Station studio, they ended up not doing too well, and I think Berkeley ended up buying them, and they're doing
Okay.
like teaching through there. The Hit Factory, which is another big one in the city, closed. So I think some of the bigger studios, and this is just New York, so I'm thinking all around the country are closing. But I think like, for this platinum selling artists that sell a lot of money, they have the ability to go in. Like John Mayer still goes into the Power Station and he wants to record there, but he's got the money to do it.
Is that, by the way, the same studio where Robert Palmer?
Yeah.
That's what he named the album after, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Making sure I have my history right. Okay.
Yeah. It's a great studio.
Oh yeah, that's very cool, and it's interesting because for how all of us can lament, what's happening with technology and social media and all that. A lot of it is a great equalizer. Like, I'm gonna look at you and guess that you're probably 41, 42. Am I close?
You're in the territory. I hit my age after I turned 30. I said I was never going to be any older.
That's all right. So all right, it's all good. So I'm an old fart compared to you. I'm 57. If all goes well, I'll be 58 pretty soon. So, who would have thunk, if you were my age, let's say, even your age, let's say, 25 years ago, who would have thunk that you could put out a product like you can put out in 2021 or 2022 with that level of sonic quality, basically free once you buy, relatively modest equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, there are people who are recording movies on an iPhone.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple tells us that. I don't know if it's really true, but that's what Apple says, and I'm afraid to contradict Apple. They might kill me. But but certainly, if you have iMac is the standalone. What do they call the laptop? Is it
the Mac Pro?
Mac Pro. That's my kids have that. All right. So if you have a Mac Pro, you buy the right software and a decent microphone, and the effects you have. That's like 2 hours of studio time 25 years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you could put out a gorgeous product from a sonic point of view, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to realize when you look back at what the Beatles were recording on now is, I got more technology right here at this little desk than they had, but it doesn't mean that that's a good thing either.
I know. The funny thing is, I'll come back. I mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was before we chatted, before we started recording or not. We had Steve Conti on, who's a big New York guy, and he was with the New York Dolls for years. I think he might still be with them. Even we were talking about tape, right? Reel to reel. Do you have any thoughts about the amazing equalizing qualities of this digital technology now versus, let's go back, I mentioned way earlier, the Kinks, right? So that the Kinks, we all know, if they're slicing up speakers, if they're recording, they're using a tape. They're using a physical tape that, I guess, a half inch, right?
Right.
So do you have any views about, sort of the beauty of the imperfection of analog versus the perfection of digital?
Yeah, I totally do. I mean, my first two records were done on was the first one was done on a reel, but it was a digital reel.
Okay.
The second one was done analog.
So what does a digital reel mean?
It was it was the first kind of it was a Sony, one of those big Sony machines, and it had a reel on it. But the second one was analog. So I do know the difference, and I do think there's a difference.
Yeah.
And the thing, the weird thing about, the funny thing about you bringing this up is like today, like I was going to try and do like a vinyl pressing because everyone's into the vinyl, but it's very expensive. But,
I bet, yeah.
People now like are going crazy for this vinyl, but you don't realize is that they're taking a digital. It's like you're listening to a CD, but you're listening to it it's not the same thing. If it wasn't recorded and going through the analog equipment, it's not going to sound different on the vinyl.
Yeah, that's that's a hokey proposition.
Yeah.
Now getting, if you were to go into the studio with a tube amp and a tape recorder in analog and press a vinyl out of that, that's a different animal.
That's what you would get a nice sound. I mean, I have my old, uh, vinyl player, my old, I still have my old albums when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
love listening to it. It sounds
Yeah.
great.
And it's so funny because, I have an old Denon turntable, and I don't like it because it's too modern, because it's only 40 years old. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a real turntable because it was like late 80s. And I somehow feel guilty that it's not old enough.
Right.
But
But speaking of that,
yeah.
it's a weird thing. There's an engineer friend of mine, Ethan, that I actually just texted him this the other day. I was driving. I had a long drive uh, to Pennsylvania from New York, and
Okay.
I was listening to my. It's the first time I got to my new album on CD. So we were listening to it in the car, my wife and I was listening to it. Sounds great and everything, and then we put on the radio, and like some older stuff started to come on, like from the 80s, some 70s stuff, listening to it.
Right.
And I was listening after listening to my CD, and I was like, there are some differences that are pretty cool with the digital stuff. Like, for instance, I was noticing that, like, when you put on older music and you listen to the drums and you listen to the bass and the guitar and then the vocals are sort of like on top, and then everything else is sort of kind of mushy when you compare
Okay.
to it to a new CD. So like when you listen to a new CD, like I knew this because I was listening to my own songs, and I was like, is the hi-hat like loud enough? But you know what? You could hear the hi-hat, you could hear each tom, you could hear everything like perfectly. And then when you put on an old recording, you only kind of hear the hi-hat a little bit because it's
Yeah,
so
they
mushed
yeah.
in. So it's a different animal. So the new technology, it's like you could hear every single thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some cool stuff to that as well.
Yeah. And what none of us want to become are those who reject the positive technological developments out of this sort of stubborn adherence to what we had when we were kids.
Yeah,
I don't like that either, because you become old and irrelevant if you refuse to embrace something new that's good, right?
yeah. Listen, I totally agree with you. Like I say this a lot. Like a lot of people, like I am like an old school. I had an old Marshall. I still have my Marshall uh 69 that I got from somebody, cabs with original greenbacks in them, and I got these heads here and stuff. But I embrace the modeling amplifiers and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I always, like, I said this to a friend, and I was like, just think, Jimi Hendrix, like an Electric Ladyland, he was so into the studio and coming up with new stuff. You think that if Jimi Hendrix was alive now, he would be and take advantage of the new
Right.
technology?
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's a stupid attitude to have. Oh, I
I
only play
agree.
tube
Yeah.
amps. Why?
Right. And I will say that on some weird sentimental level, I'm partial to tube amps, but you know what? Give me anything modern that's recorded digitally on some amp that's purely solid state. I'll still enjoy the music every bit as much,
Yeah, yeah,
and maybe more, right? Because at the end of the day, it comes back to what we started with, is that you as an artist and as a recording artist, you will have an idea, you will feel an emotion, you will have a thought, and you'll come up with your title, and then you will emote that through a song you write and perform. And whatever best allows you to communicate those feelings, you could have on one tune, you could say, you know what, I'm going to use my old Boogie tube amp on part of it, and I'm going to just go right into the board for my lead, because that'll sound better and convey the way I feel better.
right,
It's whatever allows you as an artist to best communicate how you feel.
right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. Um, so let me say this: we're sort of it's so funny because I told you this before we started recording. Feels like 10 minutes. We're going almost an hour already, and it feels like 10 minutes. But my barometer is this. I'm just taking tiny sips because it's so delicious. I don't want to use it up yet.
Cheers.
Very nice IPA here. But there we go. I gotta go backwards. The camera goes backwards. But One of the things on my long list for, we'll have to come back someday. We'll do another interview if you'd like. You're an
Sure.
endorser, and you've got Ibanez and you've got DV Mark.
Yeah.
It is, I don't know DV Mark as well, and I'd love you to explain that to us. But Ibanez, to start with, they're a big deal. Like to get an endorsement deal with Ibanez, first of all, I think speaks a lot about you. And secondly, just sounds like a great opportunity for you through your music to help build their brand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be involved with all the companies that I've been with. I don't consider myself the normal guitar player that a lot of people are this way when it comes to endorsements. Is everyone wants to, like, if you see a lot of people jump around from equipment company to equipment company. I've been with them this year. It's actually 30 years.
Oh my God, really?
Endorsed them 30 years. Diadario the same way. DiMarzio pickups 30 years.
Oh, you got Diadario?
Yeah, yeah. For all these companies I've been with. So to me, I like this equipment before I was endorsed with them. So that's my thing is.
And you have DiMarzio too, you said?
Yeah.
You're taking me back to my high school days. Some of my best guitar is DiMarzio.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
So I mean, I like the stuff. That was the stuff that I liked, and then to be able later to ended up getting an endorsement with them is like that's like the icing on the cake. You know
my
God.
I mean? It's like, I mean, you started guitar. You're, I guess, 11. I think you said when you started. You're playing guitars. You're buying Diadario strings. If you're lucky, you have DiMarzio pickups on at least some of your guitars.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we want you to endorse us. That's really cool.
No, it's a big deal. I mean, I'm really happy, and it says to me, it says a lot about the companies because like I said before, it's not like I'm like this big artist that's I'm an independent artist, and these companies support all different levels of musicians, which is a really good thing.
That's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Well, I got to tell you, this has been a lot of fun. I love the process here of getting on our Guitar Tales show, of getting to meet really nice, interesting people, and you sure as hell fall in that category.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Scott for hooking it up with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an asshole now. I forgot to mention Scott Guitarist. Thank you for connecting us. Our wonderful publicist, who is also the guitar player for the Smoking Jackets, and our dear friends at Riverview Studios. So Rob Balducci, robbalducci.com, or just look up Rob Balducci on Facebook. I'm going to guess you're on Instagram. Maybe you're not.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Instagram, Spotify, just put them in your browser. You'll find them. And more importantly, you'll find really amazing stuff. So we're going to sign off right now, but this is Dave Cohen on Guitar Tales. We've had a great time. We'll have more wonderful programming for you. Everybody have a great night and be safe.
Thank you.